Time to pull up a chair and talk some Dynasty football. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and this is the Rider Dynasty podcast, presented by Gridiron Ratings. Your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Well, gentlemen, after a crazy draft last weekend, tonight we complete our post-draft rookie mock and find out who is on the move. Joining me, as always, Big Daddy Don Detweiler. How you doing, Don?
Dude, I'm doing wonderful. It's great. The draft was so interesting because just chaos ensued. And so many of the top guys went to interesting spots. We're going to get into that later. But the fallout is what makes it great. So here we go. Let's see what happens.
Unfortunately, I slept through most of it. But luckily, I caught the recaps.
Your boys did you proud.
Thank you. And I caught the recaps from the host of the Fantasy Chop Shop. You know him. You tolerate him. You find him on Twitter at Ronnie A. Evans. Ron, what's going on?
Not much. That show was those multiple shows. We ended up, it was almost 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours of analysis on the rookie draft with Jeff DiMatteo and Jordan Vanek from 4 for 4. And this draft was like, it stunk for landing spots pretty much across the board. Everyone was a lot more excited before the draft than after, but we're still excited for draft season and Dynasty. And the truth is, you can get some steals now because people are tentative on these players. And in the end, it's Dynasty, so talent wins out.
Absolutely. Also with us, busy from the debut of his latest YouTube video, the Devi Dirtbag. How are you doing, Ryan?
Great, JJ. Thanks for having me. Glad you talked about the YouTube videos. It's a 3-part series, my personal rookie draft guide. So for those of you starting rookie drafts soon, go ahead and check that out on YouTube.
Now, you might have noticed a fresh face. Our special guest this evening, fresh off of a baseball diamond, I'd assume, somewhere. A writer for True North Fantasy, and We Bet. You can find him on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. It's Coach Craig. How you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. And I, like you kind of mentioned, I do a lot of different things. So I write for those two. I help out with Sons of Dynasty with some of the content they're putting out. We did a lot of rookie hype videos for their YouTube channel. I've been hoping, do some optimization for SEO for getting those videos to pop and everything like that. I obviously have my own YouTube channel, Coach Craig Sports, where I got daily MLB DFS right now. I'm going through some NFL draft grades. When we get closer to NFL season, I do some fantasy content as well as DFS content. So a little bit of everything right now. Did some talking about the rookies before the draft. We did JC Money Design and myself. We did day 2 and day 3 live stream besides round 7. So
nobody likes round 7. So you do MLB DFS. That seems like such a grind. How do you find the time in your life to do that?
So a lot of it for me is just after I get done with this, I'll edit my draft grade video, and then after that, I'll do research pitcher versus hitter stats, and then I'll kind of just go through those and compare it to like the guys that are kind of hitting pretty well right now, and try to make because you're making educated guesses more so than any other sport. It's kind of predictable, but it's not really. Like, it's probably the least predictable sports in terms of DFS. Outside of like USFL right now, which I'm doing a little bit of right now too. I do a video of that every week, just kind of going through, kind of being like, hey, I play this guy in GPP, I play this guy in cash. I don't know how many people are actually playing cash for USFL, but that's a whole nother story for a different day. But NBA is definitely the most predictable. I do that during the NBA regular season, then NFL obviously during the NFL regular season too. So if it's DFS, I probably do it. I casually play golf. I don't really cover that as much. We do some NASCAR talk on Sundays for a live show for Super Draft DFS as well, which
cricket DFS yet?
Nah.
Not cricket. Squash?
No.
You wait. Yeah. It's next.
There's always something.
Biggest sport in the world. Before we jump into the episode, thank you so much for coming on. Gridiron Ratings has published our rookie draft guide, over 140 pages, rookie profiles for both offensive and IDP rookies, positional breakdowns, integrated draft boards for every type of league, only $15. I had the pleasure of editing the guide, and it even impressed me. And I'm cranky as all hell, and nothing impresses me. So jump on Gridiron Ratings to get your copy. Gentlemen, enough. No talk of news. Let's get right to the main. Oh,
can I throw in one thing?
Sure, Ronnie.
If you're coming from Reddit and you want the Aaron Donald jersey from those previous shows this weekend, you got to watch the mock draft because we're not announcing it until it's over. So stick around, learn something about the rookies, and then we'll throw you the jersey if you want at the end.
Thanks, Ron. Absolutely. We will be giving away the Aaron Donald jersey by the end of tonight's episode. Now, hope may spring eternal, but draft capital can crush dreams, gentlemen. We completed our pre-draft 4-round rookie mock draft, and now that we know their landing spots, it's time to revisit to complete a post-draft 2-round rookie. The rules are the same: 12-team, 1 QB, PPR. We will be picking in the same order until the second round is complete, and the order for tonight is as it shows up on the screen. Coach Craig is picking first, followed by Ryan, Don, and then Ronnie. So, Coach Craig, you are the guest tonight. You get to pick first. Where are you going?
Well, typically I don't really have the 101 anywhere, and if I did, I'd probably be trading out of it this year, honestly.
So
But I'll still take Breece Hall first overall. I don't think there's too much debate with a lot of people. I mean, just depending on what some of the leagues that you're in, depending on who you're drafting with. I mean, some people might take a wide receiver first. Some people might take Kenneth Walker first just because he ended up in Seattle. And like consensus, like if you're just talking real big picture, not fantasy related, Kenneth Walker was the consensus RB1 pre-draft when you take across all the experts with from non-fantasy perspective. But then you also have to add in the pass catching and all that stuff too.
Yeah, as a Jets fan, I am very happy with the pick of Breece Hall. We seem to have gotten some heat for it. Some of our draft grades suffered because we went at the top of the second for a running back. You're not hearing me complain. Fantastic pick, Joe Douglas. Thank you. Next up on the board, Ryan.
Well, it's pretty wild that the top 2 picks in this mock are going to be New York Jets because I'm going with Garrett Wilson here. He was my wide receiver 1 before the draft, and he is my wide receiver 1 after the draft. I've seen a lot of people complaining about Wilson to the Jets because of Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's going to be fine. I have a theory about what happened with him last year. They looked at the roster. They looked at Wilson. They said, hey, just go out there, get it all out of your system, make the mistakes, learn from it, come back stronger next year. And he's coming back this year with a true number 1 receiver in Garrett Wilson. And I think he's gonna be a perennial like 1,100, 1,200 plus yard receiver with upside for 1,400 even.
Whew, your mouth's got ears. Ronnie, what are you thinking about Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall? 2 Jets going 1-2.
I think it's the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen be a reality in dynasty football, to have the New York Football Jets potentially with a majority of the top 2 picks in dynasty football. It's just confirming my suspicions that we're in a simulation and whoever's in control is having fun. But I like Garrett Wilson.
We are in end times, aren't we, young man?
But Garrett Wilson's a stud, man. He was my favorite wide receiver pre-draft too, and I think that this pick is going to go in a number of directions depending on your league. So if you've got it, either take the guy you like more than anyone else, or trade back to where I'm picking at number 4 because that's my favorite spot in the drafts.
Well, before we get to number 4, Don, you get to go number 3. Ooh,
3's
I don't know
interesting
what that
here,
means.
Yeah. 3's interesting because 2 for me is an inflection point, whether you're taking both backs 1 and 2, or you get into a high talent, really dynamic wide receiver. But I'm the beneficiary here, so I'm taking Kenneth Walker III at 3. And I'll tell you what, Seattle's backfield is primed to be taken over. I love what they did in the draft. 2 brand new offensive tackles, an investment in an offensive line that they just don't do. For them to turn around and put that kind of capital there, that's awesome. And Walker's running ability is dynamic. He can catch the ball better than people are saying. If you look way back at his previous school, dude's got chops. That's going to blow up. It might not be year 1, but by year 2, he'll have chased out the rest, and you're going to have a player on your hands.
That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to them having a reliable running back who they can just hand the rock off to, like Pete Carroll loves to do. Coach Craig, do you see Kenneth Walker getting the bulk of the carries this year?
Yeah, I think he probably steps into most of it right away. I mean, there's still a Rashad Penny truthers out there, but I think it's probably a split right away. And we know Penny can't stay healthy at this point, so I'm not really concerned about that. He's on a 1-year deal either way, so the value should just go up in theory, but only time will tell. I think it was really interesting, the offensive tackles they picked up, because you think of them being the run-heavy team. And the biggest thing about Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, they both came from air raid systems, or for most of their career, they were in air raid systems. So they're really good pass blockers, and the knock was kind of the running back, or the run protection, or running blocking. So that's kind of interesting, but I like both those tackles a lot. Cross was my offensive tackle number 2. Lucas, I had a second-round grade on, so I think they did very well with those two guys.
Fantastic. Ronnie, you are up.
Yeah, I wanted Kenneth Walker here. We could talk on and on about him. We can cover him more in other shows, but people are out of their minds talking about him as like not being able to catch the ball. I would challenge you to find the last Michigan State running back that caught a lot of balls. And he's the most talented back in this entire class, Breece Hall included. And I think that Kenneth Walker is going to be in somebody that people regret not taking in the top 3 in a lot of drafts, because it's probably going to happen in quite a few places. That said, I'm going to go with Drake London. It's an easy pick for me here, and that's why I love the 4 spot, because you're guaranteed to get Kenneth Walker, Drake London, Treylon Burks, or Garrett Wilson. And it's really a toss-up of who you like the most out of those 3, but I have a hunch that most people are going to have 3 of those guys ahead of their 4th guy. And if you're sitting in the 4th spot, you're just sitting pretty, and one of them's going to fall to you, and they're all equally good picks. Drake London is going to be a stud in the NFL. He is, I hate everything JJ Zacharias said about him. All of this whole like possession receiver, it's ridiculous. Go watch his tape. That is not who he is. And he's going to tear up the NFL for a long, long time. It just might take a couple years before he pops on your teams because of the quarterback situation, especially if Desmond Ridder ends up getting the job here in the next 24 months.
Now, Ryan, I used to bring up Drake London to you only to sour the Amon-Ra St. Brown conversation. What do you think about Drake London, who was better at USC than Amon-Ra?
I think Drake London's a very good receiver prospect. I don't think he's receiver 1. I actually have him at 6 on my board. He's going off at super flex rankings 109, so it'd be 108 in this case for me. I like him. I think he's going to be a productive player. I just don't think he's going to pop the way a lot of others are saying he will. I'm worried about his speed. The corners are always going to be able to stick to him. He doesn't have that kind of wiggle to lose like smaller, more agile athletes. So I think he's going to have to be overly physical to get a lot more catches than a guy like Garrett Wilson, who gets open by, creating that natural separation with like top tier route running and just being a better athlete than the guy across from him.
Fair enough. Coach Craig.
So I wanted to say too, Drake London, I know people question his athleticism, but the dude played college basketball as a freshman too, and was a 2 guard at USC. Granted, he didn't play a lot, but like that's still something to note there too. And the dude wins off the release package. He wins at the top of the route. He wins in contested catches. And I know people criticize the contested catches too, but Keaton Slovis was late throwing the ball a lot of the time too when that was happening. So there's a lot of things there too, a lot of variables, but I think he's a very good player, and he's going to end up producing pretty well. And him and Kyle Pitts will kind of help each other out a little bit. See if Calvin Ridley comes back next year or if he's somewhere else. But even when you talk about Ridder, I think Ridder's going to be in there at some point this year, just because he's a 3rd round pick. They want to see what they have in him. If they don't like what they have in him after 1 year, they're just going to pick somebody else. It's kind of like how Davis Mills was last year.
Sure.
Yeah. But for my pick, like this gets to be the point where I don't really want to make a pick here. This would be another trade down spot for me because I'd rather have one of those top 4 guys that already went. So I guess I'll take Treylon Burks here out of Tennessee. Obviously, there is the upside with pretty open wide receiver room outside of Robert Woods there, who's coming off an ACL injury himself. Treylon Burks obviously did very well in the SEC. mainly poor quarterback play besides the 1 year Felipe Franks, which some people like to knock on him, but he was very good at Arkansas for that 1 year. There is a little bit of concern there. Obviously, the measurables were not as nice as we like to see, but there was some kind of work ethic concerns with him coming up to the draft. Like he didn't start working out till like the last minute, and that's why he didn't run as well. But then he had his pro day like 10 days to 2 weeks later and didn't even like try to test better than anything else really. So you're looking at a guy that's kind of had some weight concerns, weight fluctuation, at least in college. So with the top tier athlete, hopefully you keep that in perspective. They have a dietitian on the team and they're hopefully going to keep that. But if things don't pan out, you could be looking at another Calvin Benjamin gets up to 250 pounds, and then maybe it's one good year. So that there's kind of the concerns there. But I think what he probably ends up being is kind of what people wanted Laviska Shenault to be. He's not going to be Deebo Samuel. He's not going to be A.J. Brown, but I think that's a more fair comparison. And he's more similar to Laviska Shenault coming out of college.
Don, where are you at with Treylon Burks? Do you think the Titans did the right thing by getting rid of A.J. Brown and taking Treylon?
Well, considering the contract demands, the Titans had no chance. They were just up against it. There was no way to fit the contract that A.J. Brown wanted underneath their cap, especially this late in the ball game after just handing out contracts to pass rushers and working on the offensive line. That just wasn't possible. So to have to pivot as quickly as they had to and make a deal come together quickly to get the 18th pick, plus they did pretty well for themselves. As for the player, I like the size. I like the ability. Even if they have to work him out of the slot, there's still potential there. And with no real consistent tight end threat in Tennessee, he can work out of the slot. He can work closer to the line of scrimmage, and you can do a lot. They ran bubble screen after bubble screen 2 years ago. They can do it again. There's ways to get a guy the ball, especially with his size and his catch radius, as long as they keep him under control, basically by sitting on his dietitians and so forth. That's doable at the pro level. And I think he can be productive. The chances for the just massive target share is absolutely there.
Ryan, where are you going at with pick 1-6?
Jameson Williams. This is an easy one. I have him number 3 on my board, and so getting him at 6 here, that's value. Jameson Williams has the highest upside of any receiver in this class, and he landed on a team with a vacuum at the wide receiver 1 position. And, you know, Jameson Williams has like 1,500 yard type upside. He is just uber freaking talented. And if it wasn't for the ACL, I think that consensus would be a whole hell of a lot higher on him. He just has that. He has the kind of speed that nobody can hang with. He's a good route runner. He has really good hands. I just don't see him not coming back as good as ever after this injury. The ACL is really just, it happens, but these guys, they don't have typically careers ruined over it as much anymore, at least. So he's going to come back just fine, I believe, and he's going to be a hell of a receiver. Jared Goff can support quality fantasy options. He showed it throughout his career with the Rams, and I don't think that Goff is really even going to be the quarterback for the future there. I wouldn't put it past Holmes to the GM there in Detroit to try to pull off a similar move to what the Rams did, is build up a killer roster and then trade for a veteran quarterback who can put them over the hump.
All right. Well, gentlemen, sitting at 1-6, halfway through the first round, question for you. What is the highest pick? This comes from Dave Heilman. What's up, Dave? What's the highest pick that you would trade for Hollywood Brown or Rondale Moore following Hopkins' suspension?
I can jump in and just say the Hopkins suspension doesn't change it for me either way. I already was moving on from Hopkins in Dynasty. I think he's going to be fine this year when he plays, but those two guys are going to be the guys of the future there. I don't know what I'll let somebody answer the trade thing, but the Hopkins thing didn't move the needle for me for their value outside of redraft.
What about you, Craig?
So I think it's probably like 110, 111 range. That's where it falls off for me. I think I'd rather have Hollywood Brown than some of those guys. In theory, they could get out from DeAndre Hopkins after this season. They'll save $8 million. It'd probably be the year after that. But, Hollywood Brown and Kyler Murray probably going to be together for the long run, I would assume. Obviously, Kyler gets paid this year. Marquise Hollywood Brown probably gets paid the year after that. Or if he doesn't get paid, then you piss Kyler Murray off, and then we got a whole nother situation on our hands too. So it could be very interesting there. And then, in terms of Rondale Moore, that's a tough one just because, I don't know how much Hopkins suspension impacts him. He should be on the field more, but they also drafted Trey McBride and they gave Zach Ertz an extension. So they might want to put 2 tight ends on the field a little bit more often. Plus, Cliff Kingsbury's boy is Antoine Wesley. He had him in college. He loves that dude. And when Cliff Kingsbury loves somebody, he's going to do whatever he can for that guy. Obviously, we've seen that with Kyler Murray going number 1 overall. So,
all right, Don, are you on board?
Yeah, I would even tell you that this is the last pick I would keep. So 1-8 and beyond is what I would consider for Hollywood Brown, but 1-7, I'm keeping it, and I'm keeping it for Chris Olave. Landing in New Orleans, dude is an absolute technician. He can run any route you want, and he's probably the prototypical wide receiver too. He'll fit into that offense just beautifully. He can do whatever you want. You can put him on an island. You can run him away from the bunch. You can put him just in 11 personnel as the other wide receiver. He can do it all. Fast, big enough to catch with a good catch radius. Love the hands. Love the talent.
Whew. That was enthusiastic. A great segue. I give that a 10. That's a 10 out of 10. Woo! Great job, Don. You pass. You get an A. Ronnie, where are you going with 1-8?
I'm going to take the guy that I couldn't get in the Writers League that I ended up just sitting on, Chris Olave, after an auto draft. I thought about it and was like, I'll get Skyy Moore in other leagues. I'll just use Chris Olave in this one. But I love Skyy Moore's potential. I think his potential in the long term, paired up with Patrick Mahomes, whew, he might, with Jameson Williams, he might have tied for the highest long-term fantasy potential if things work out. I'm not counting on it to work out that way, but Skyy Moore's an animal. He was one of my favorite players pre-draft. I know that you guys talked about him a lot on other pods. Jeff DiMatteo and I talked about him a bit on the Chop Shop. He's been a hot topic of discussion throughout the offseason in the whole Gridiron Ratings team, and I don't think he could have gone to a better spot. I mean, I love him. I'm happy to take him here.
Yeah, you want to go to a coach that's offensively inclined and possibly the best throwing quarterback in the league. Yeah, that's a pretty good landing spot, yep. I would say. Yeah.
Plus, he had the biggest hands of any wide receiver at the combine, and he's only 5'10". So that's it was 10 and 1/8 inch hands I think he had. And then, everybody pre-combine they were talking about how big Treylon Burks' hands were, he wore 3X gloves, and then his ended up being sub 10. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I think Treylon Burks might have fat fingers.
Let me throw one other thing in on Skyy Moore, because I've heard a lot of people and read a lot actually on Reddit of people talking about Mecole Hardman and this and that's kind of a crowded room this year, this and that. I am not worried at all about Mecole Hardman. With Skyy Moore, Mecole Hardman should be applying for jobs with other teams in the next 2 years. I mean, Skyy Moore has the vertical ability that Mecole Hardman has. He might be a touch slower, but it doesn't matter. He's a better route runner. He's got better hands, and he is better with the ball in his hands than Mecole Hardman, and I have no problem saying all 4 of those things. Mecole Hardman is the guy that is hurt the worst by the Skyy Moore pick on that team.
Yeah.
And I'll just say he was actually recruited as a cornerback at Western Michigan, then converted to wide receiver full-time too, so he's only going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine being that young and talented?
Nope.
Nope, me neither. Speaking of young and talented, Coach Craig, you're up next at 1-9.
Well, I ain't that young no more, so I'm over the hill.
Easy, young man.
So this pick's easy for me. This is Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. I have been a fan of Christian Watson since 2020, pretty much before anybody knew who he was. So when Trey Lance was first kind of getting his little hype, no interceptions and all that stuff, I started watching the film. And I'm like, hey, who's this number 1 guy? He is just murdering all these corners. It's not even close. And yes, everybody's like, oh, the raw stats aren't that good, but still had a 40% dominator rating this year. He accounted for 35.3% of his team's receiving yards this year. His team ran the ball 62% of the time, and they were in blowouts because they they are essentially the Alabama of the FCS. They just beat the crap out of teams. So they don't need to throw that often. Plus, obviously, got a little bit of a downtick in quarterback this year since Trey Lance was gone. But even when Trey Lance was there, he was only throwing the ball like 14 to 18 times a game anyways. So like people are like, oh, he only got like 4 catches a game. But like, do you realize how much that is when the quarterback's only thrown it 14 times a game? And he was involved, as a punt returner, end arounds, and everything else like that. And like this guy could be the complete unicorn of this class. We don't see guys that are 6'4", his size, his weight, run 4.36s. Like it just doesn't happen. Yes, there are some drop concerns there, but that kind of goes back to how many times they threw to. So if the whole year he dropped 6 passes, the drop percentage is going to look worse because he only had so many targets compared to some of the other guys. I don't think it's a major issue long-term, but maybe it's not quite right away this year, but long-term, like this could be the unicorn at wide receiver in this class. And at this point in the draft, that's what I'm trying to shoot for. I take Skyy Moore and I take Christian Watson over Chris Olave myself personally, just because I know what Chris Olave is. And that doesn't excite me as much for fantasy. He's just kind of like that second wide receiver. His upside is kind of like an Emmanuel Sanders type.
Fair enough. That's a great career, not necessarily great for fantasy.
And I will say that too with Chris Olave. Just sorry to cut you off real quick. The Saints better hope he's awesome because the amount of draft picks they traded up to essentially have that number 11 pick is ridiculous. That's like a Bill O'Brien type of trade, which I know too well for my Texans fandom.
Yeah, I thought somebody posted an overall breakdown of what the Saints gave up for their
Austin
couple
Gale
picks.
from PFF did. I know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I forget what it was. But it was shocking. It was like, eesh, they better show up. They better show up. Ryan, you're up next, 110.
I'm going to go James Cook here. And my reason for that is...
Uh-oh, Ryan, you sound like a robot. All right, so Ryan is going to log off and log back on, which is the normal IT go-to whenever anything breaks down, right? Like
99% sure he said James Cook.
Look who's here. What's up, Ryan?
All right. I am
back in business.
Do I sound non-robotic?
Perfect.
Great. So I'm going James Cook here. He got second round draft capital. He landed in the perfect landing spot, Buffalo Bills. I've seen a lot of chatter about concerns over the kind of workload he can handle. I have him around 210. Like as just a safe projection, that's 12.4 touches per game. I think that's reasonable, even for a guy who's relatively undersized. I think that's reasonable for a running back taken with second round draft capital and like 60 catch a season type upside, if not more. So I'm buying into that because you could easily, with his skill set, become like a low end RB1 when you throw in all that receiving work that he's going to get. I know Josh Allen's probably still going to vulture the touchdowns on the goal line, but he'll have some explosive breakaways. He's a fast guy. He has those Cook genetics. I'm taking James Cook in the late first round everywhere I can.
I don't know how I feel about James Cook. Don, where are you?
I'm with you in that I worry that he's not going to get the high-value touches around the goal line to go with it. However, if there's a back that's going to succeed in Buffalo, it's James Cook-style running back that's very adept to catching the football and can be an outstanding outlet and something that the right Allen is going to throw to and not necessarily call him his own number to. So I think if there was going to be a running back to succeed in Buffalo, I think Cook is a great way to go.
Now, sticking with you, Don, who are you going with at pick 11?
Oh, it's time to get my black and gold colored spectacles out. Here we go. I'm going to go to the second round of the real draft, and I want George Pickens here. George Pickens is an absolute monster. He's 21 years old. There's still meat on the developmental bone here, and that's something that the Steelers absolutely love to do is get guys that are younger or on the younger end. At 6'3", 200, and coming off ACL surgery, the dude already ran 4.47. That's only going to improve as he distances himself from the surgery. He's got excellent body control, can already stretch the field as evidenced by the national title game. And with the Steelers wide receivers as they are, and Claypool, ironically, calling the number, he may very well have been calling the number of his replacement because he has been underwhelming, and Pickens does everything that Claypool does better.
That was my question for you, Don.
I-
A little bit concerned, right? I mean, Claypool and Pickens, are they the same? Like, I
No.
think of that meme with Spider-Man
Right.
pointing.
Yeah, what they are is different animals in that Pickens can run better routes and run more of the route tree than Claypool can. Claypool is definitely your prototypical outside go guy. Pickens has more talent, more athleticism, and more of a dynamic, explosive route runner that has the possibility to do more for you on in cuts, crossers, and less of the just jump ball dependency that such a big guy in Claypool really has. So I like Pickens. I like the developmental possibility here. Call me a homer. I don't care. He's my guy.
Craig, are you calling him a homer?
No, I just kind of disagree. I think Pickens is more the jump ball guy. 80% of his production came on 9 routes and slant routes at Georgia, like in his career. Like, so I think he still has a lot of work to do in developing his route tree as well. I don't say that Claypool still obviously does too, but I think Claypool is obviously the bigger, faster guy at this point in time. I think Pickens is a little bit of a lesser version of that, but they're similar players to me. And the weird part to me was like, no offense to like Kenny Pickett, but he's got like an NFL average arm, and they're building like all these kind of guys that are, they're more deep play options with a Chase Claypool, with the George Pickens, and Calvin Austin, who I really do like a lot. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the offense all comes together. And then obviously you got the big question if they give Deontay Johnson a contract or not too. So that's going to be a big question mark coming up pretty soon.
The biggest. That's a huge question mark for Pittsburgh. Ronnie, finish off the first round for me.
Well, I already got 2 wide receivers here, so I'm going to skip over the guy I would take with just Jahan Dotson. I'm also going to assume that this imaginary team is competing for championships because that's how it is in every single league I'm in, except for one of the ones I just joined. I'm going with, why am I losing his name? Dameon Pierce. I don't know why I forgot who I was taking there for a second. I think Dameon Pierce could very well lead all rookies in touches as a running back.
I thought there was going to be more after that.
I thought there was too, but then I felt good about it.
Good. Listen, if you're feeling good, walk off. Craig, as a Houston fan, correct?
Yes.
What are we
as a
thinking?
Houston fan, I hope he's right. There are some concerns. Like, I think he's very talented, but then you also have like the committee concerns at Florida. He's always been kind of stuck in this committee. He's very efficient per touch, but how is that going to translate to the NFL level? Obviously, more teams are going to committees, and I think he's a very good player, but he's also a guy that you're talking about with the draft capital that he got. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets replaced in 2023 with the running back class that is coming out in that year, or at least supplemented, kind of like we've seen like with Michael Carter.
Sell high on Dameon. He'll blow up as a rookie and then sell him.
Yeah,
That'd be my plan.
At least his competition is just Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead. So if you can't beat out those guys, you probably don't have a bright future anyways.
Yep.
No, not at all. Don, looking at this first round, which name pre-draft would you have scoffed at?
Pre-draft scoffed at. Looking at it now, I wouldn't have talked about Pierce in round 1 at all. It's just not possible. But with the other guys landing in difficult spots and him getting a spot that he can absolutely dominate a backfield, he definitely got elevated for sure. For me, probably a whole round. I had him at the top of 3 to sneak into the back of 1. That's really something.
All right. Well, let's start the second round. Coach Craig, you are up first again.
Yeah, so I was just gonna put 2. I threw in the chat too that or in the private chat what the New Orleans Saints gave up. So this was from PFF Austin Gale. So the New Orleans Saints essentially traded picks 98, 101, 120, a first rounder in 2023, and a 2024 second rounder for Chris Olave.
Well,
That's
he
a
better
lot.
be good.
Yeah.
He better be good.
He's gonna
Let's
be
see
good.
what that so essentially 2/3, a fourth, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick.
AJ Brown went for less.
Yeah, no. So Chris Olave is like amazing or something. I don't know.
Cost a lot more money.
Well, yeah, AJ Brown went for a 1 to 3 and
25 mil a year,
Yeah,
Yeah.
technically.
It's a little bill at the end.
Yeah, but it's probably pretty similar to the Tyreek Hill trade. So that plus paying him like $30 million a year too. So we'll see. We'll see.
So they have it. They have it.
But in this pick, this would be another spot where I'd be looking to trade out because like everything that I really want in this draft is pretty much gone. I'm actually in a draft right now where I'm trying to trade the 2 pick. I'm actually trying to either trade it away or trade it plus something else for Christian Watson. So then I'd have Christian Watson and Skyy Moore in that draft, but that's a whole other story for a different day. So when I'm looking here, you got Jahan Dotson, who got the real life draft capital in the first round. Like, I think somebody would still value trading for him if he has a blow up week. There is always the possibility that Terry McLaurin just like walks away and they don't re-sign him. That would be like what you're betting on if you're picking Jahan Dotson. I do like the talent. I really hate this landing spot, especially with Carson Wentz there, because he's probably like third, fourth option in the pecking order there. It's just not pretty for me. So I'm probably just going to go down to running back. I'm going to bet on a guy that I think could potentially work his way in a role this year and keep his job long term, and that's my boy Tyler Algiere out of BYU. So he is another converted linebacker. When somebody asked me to explain him, I'm like, he's kind of like Javonte Williams light. So he's not obviously as good. He didn't have as high a draft capital, but obviously has nose for the end zone, had a very high broken tackle percentage, had like the most yards per contact in all of college football last year. The dude's very, very good in pass protection. He's a very, very underrated wide or receiving backfield too. You didn't see as much of it when Zach Wilson was there because Zach Wilson would just take off and run instead because he is a very underrated athlete as well. So there wasn't quite as much of that. But like I was just watching the Zach Wilson film like initially, and I'm like, wait, who the heck's this running back? Because like you could tell that he was good. Go look at the stats, and I'm like, oh, this guy over like 1,000 yards. And then like they lost Zach Wilson. Obviously this year they lost 3 or 4 of their starting offensive linemen from the previous year. I'm like, okay, let's see what this guy does without the offensive line, without the first round quarterback. Comes out and dominates and has 20 plus touchdowns. I'm like, okay, so this is somebody we need to talk about. Obviously, he didn't run as good at the combine as people thought, but 4.6 for a guy that's 224 pounds. I was at the combine. This dude's shoulders are freaking huge. Like they're about the size of your head. Like it's just crazy. But I think he's one of the guys that we're talking about in this range of running backs that could potentially keep his job long term. Obviously, probably going to split carries with Cordero Patterson this year. Maybe Dameon Williams, but he's 30 years old, and he wasn't very good last year, first of all, and they already cut Mike Davis. So I think there's a very wide open door there. Some people might talk about the wide open door for Zamir White, but you got some whole other concerns there, and I think he's a guy you have to draft somebody to supplement him.
Love this pick. I love Tyler. I was hoping that the Jets would get him a little bit later. Then they went and took Breece Hall, so I was satisfied. But he was a player I definitely liked. Definitely. Like, Ryan, where are you going with the 1-2?
Jahan Dotson. Because he's number 2 in the pecking order on that team. He's going to be their second best receiving option. And Carson Wentz he's a shell of himself, and he might be replaced in the near future, but he's capable of supporting 2 fantasy relevant options. And Jahan Dotson's really not that dissimilar from Terry McLaurin, who they found a way to deploy him to his full potential. So I'm not worried about Dotson, his landing spot. He's going to be productive. And if McLaurin does walk, he does step into their sort of number 1 role with hopefully a better quarterback at that time.
Now, Ronnie, I know you were a little bit excited about Jahan Dotson. What do you think about that landing spot?
I think that I would be surprised if Terry McLaurin is playing football for the Commanders in 2024. And I think that Jahan Dotson is pure talent-wise. He's right in that tier 2 of this class. You've got 3 or 4 guys wide receiver that are in tier 1. And you got another 4 or 5 that are in tier 2, and he's right there in that mix. He could be really, really good for fantasy. I don't know that I really agree that Carson Wentz can support 2 viable fantasy assets at this point in his career, but I think that it could happen. It's not out of the realm of possibility. And I'm making trades for this guy this season. If I can't get him in drafts, I'm waiting. I'm waiting until he hits a 3-game stretch where he doesn't do a dang thing because that offense isn't doing a dang thing. And I'm scooping him up for whatever picks I can shell. I love him. I think he's going to be great long-term. He's got a lot of staying power.
Love the enthusiasm. Double D, where are you going?
So if we were talking super flex here, it'd be Kenny Pickett time, but we're not, so it isn't. And realistically, the Steelers just do not run an offense capable of supporting a 1 quarterback guy that's going to put up the yards, the touchdowns, and the volume. So at this point, give me a guy who's going to be a wide receiver 2 on his team this year. I'll take Alec Pierce out of Indy because realistically, I think the target share is going to be there. He's got a veteran quarterback who knows what they're doing. They did a lot of work to try and solve the offensive tackle problems, even in the draft. I know it's an older rookie, but still, it's better than everything they've had. They have a dominant running game. Alec Pierce is a talent. He's big. He runs. He can do slants. He can go down the field. And with a quarterback that has talent and is not completely cooked yet, I'll take Pierce at this point.
Coach Craig, you're giggling. You don't like the Alec Pierce choice there?
I don't think so. I don't think this is the best landing spot for him because Matt Ryan has really regressed on the deep ball the last few years. You could argue part of that's based on the Falcons' offensive line. Getting behind a better offensive line might help him out, but obviously he's been a guy that likes to work the middle of the field a little bit better. So that's not really what you're doing with Pierce unless you're running him on slant routes or anything like that, because you're really running him on go balls and slant routes. Maybe you get like a sluggo off of there and stuff like that. The one thing I was really surprised about is like how shocked people were that he ran fast. Like, I guess you don't see, like as much on tape, but like the dude was like he was like all state in track in high school. So it's not like he was ever slow.
Yeah, absolutely. Ronnie, you are up next, 1-4.
Well, Alex Pierce is who I would have taken. And I will a note on Alec Pierce and the other guy I wanted to take at this pick in the Writers League. I traded up at the 206 to get Tyler Algiere, and that's a super flex league. So you had a couple wide receivers. That's also tight end premium. So you had a couple tight ends. And in this draft, like if I hadn't already gotten Skyy Moore and Drake London, I might not have gone with Dameon Pierce there. I might have gone for Jahan Dotson. But this is tough. Like at this point, there's a bunch of dudes that I kind of view the same. I know Rachaad White's sitting there and people are going to get excited about that. I don't care about the Bucs. Tom Brady's not going to play next year, most likely. And I don't really know what they're going to be looking at. And he's going to get replaced by somebody eventually. He's not a stud. But I'll go with John Mechie. I'm just going to actually, let me take that back. I'm going to go with Trey McBride. At this
I don't
point
know
in
if
the
you
draft,
could do that.
I didn't take my hand off the chessboard. I haven't moved the piece officially.
The card didn't make it to the table.
All right, I'll allow it.
And here's my rationale. At this point, you're looking at tier 3 of wide receivers.
Yep.
You're looking at tier 2 of running backs in a weak class. Might as well take the top guy at the tier of tight ends, even though it's not a tight end premium league, right? If you're going to stash one of these tight ends, I'd say him and Jelani Woods are the two guys that 4 years from now might be like reliable tight end ones. And I'll take McBride. We were talking about DeAndre Hopkins earlier. I know Zach Ertz is still there. Somebody mentioned that this might force them to play McBride a little bit more than they had planned. I absolutely agree. I think that of all the players on that team, besides Hollywood getting traded there, of course, it's Trey McBride is the guy I think benefits the most as a rookie tight end from DeAndre Hopkins missing 6 games. He's going to see some snaps that he probably wouldn't have otherwise.
I'm always excited when the first tight end goes off the board. Coach Craig, you are up next.
Yeah, and it's important to note too with Trey McBride, he had 90 catches on a run-first team in Colorado State. Granted, he was the only real option they had in the receiving game, and their quarterback sucked, but that's a whole other story for a different day. And funny enough, I actually have Pierce and McBride back-to-back in my rankings too. they're a little bit lower, but my rankings that I do have right now are for super flex too. So there's a couple of quarterbacks squeezing in their head. Let's see where we're at real quick. So I'm going to go probably with a personal favorite of mine, David Bell, wide receiver for Cleveland. Very productive career for Purdue. Everybody freaked out over the combine, and he ran slow. We all knew he was going to run slow. And literally goes into the guy that he probably compares the best to's role in Cleveland in Jarvis Landry. If they can work him out of the slot, it's going to be really interesting actually to see who they use in the slot there when they do have a slot, whether it's him, whether it's like Amari Cooper. Maybe they throw somebody else there, but like I don't think you're not gonna put down with Peoples-Jones there. They tried throwing Anthony Schwartz there last year and it just didn't work. Like I don't know what you do with that guy at this point. He's just a track star, so that's a whole nother story for a different day.
Maybe let him return a couple kicks, but yeah, there's not much use for him. He kind of showed that last year. They tried. They really did try to get Schwartz the ball, but
well, he didn't even run the route. Half the time he ran the wrong route. Like he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, that tends to hurt you in the NFL.
Cleveland does not run a complex offense either.
All right, Ryan, you are up next, my friend. Where are you going with the 1-6? 2-6, sorry.
All right. Let's go. I'm between Kenny Pickett and Rachaad White. Let's go Rachaad White. I actually liked the landing spot in the draft capital, 3rd round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Leonard Fournette needs a running mate. If we're worried about Keyshawn Vaughn and who was it, Gio Bernard at this point, what are we even doing playing Dynasty? Rachaad White's going to see a lot of playing time as a rookie, and he's going to get a lot of the receiving work. He's a quality runner of the football to boot. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that as a rookie, he could average somewhere like 10 touches a game. Maybe not to begin the year, but as the season wears on. So I think he's going to be a quality flex piece by the end of the season. And he has RB2 type upside going into the future.
That's awesome to hear. He's still available actually in our, mock draft that we're doing right now. I was thinking of picking him up soon. I don't want to tell you guys.
They can actually move on from Leonard Fournette and save $1.5 million next year too, if they really want to.
Ooh. I think they're building a lot of their deals based upon like, as soon as Brady's done, jettison it all and start over right away. But we'll see when that happens. Oh, we have a comment from Gary Van Dyke. Gary has the 4th overall rookie pick. Who am I looking at if you're lucky? Drake London, according to us. Drake London, Kenneth Walker, Treylon Burks. I think you are kind of in the cat seat position, Gary. So good for you. Good for you. Don. Oh, that leads us to Don. Don, where are you going with 1-7?
Back around again. Well, looking at stuff now, you guys are absolutely right. We're in the ifs, whens, and coulds. As far as if, whens, and coulds go, I'll take Isaiah Spiller here because I want somebody who's going to clean out all that trash in the Charger backfield. And now we finally have the sidecar. We finally have the guy who can complement Eckler and take some of the goal line touches, some of the hard work, some of the short yardage, and yet still catch the ball. Is still a good, decisive runner, patient, good cuts. Might not be the fastest guy in the world, but he's got good size, good strength, runs with power. I'll take Spiller.
Fantastic. Eckler has needed that running mate. They've tried the past few drafts to find somebody. And I mean, Josh Kelly, who did they pick up last year?
Larry Roundtree.
Yeah. Left off that D. Yeah. Hopefully somebody, I mean, Eckler's going to miss some games. He misses a couple games every year. I'm not saying he's injury prone because we don't use that phrase, but they're running backs in the NFL. So he could definitely see some playing time early. Craig, are you on board with Isaiah Spiller?
Oh yeah. Isaiah Spiller is my running back 2 pre-draft. Obviously the measurables did not help him. I think he's a very good, underrated runner of the football. He's a very smart, instinctive player. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. And I will say, too, for Austin Eckler, I'd be worried for some of these touchdowns, not just because they brought Spiller in, but because they also drafted Xander Horvath with the 7th-round pick, who's like Mike Allstott Jr., who honestly, when when you compare him and Mike Allstott, they're very similar players. He actually modeled his game after Mike Allstott, and they both went to Purdue. And that they have him listed as a fullback, but he'll probably get some goal line touches. So you could see some of those disappear. Maybe this is the time to get off of Austin Eckler. He's kind of at the age where we start seeing fantasy production fall off for most running backs. I don't think there's really that negative connotation around him right now. Like people are really worried about Spiller and kind of if Horvath gets some goal line touches or something like that. Most people in the community aren't worried yet. So I think it's still a decent to sell on him.
Yeah, it's a good thought. How Eckler's what, 27?
I think he's 26 going on 27, but
he's an older,
somebody had a really good
older.
tweet.
Yeah. All right, Ronnie. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Go ahead.
Oh, somebody had a really good tweet. I can't remember when it was, but it's like running backs like going into their age 27 season or something like that. Like none of them have finished in the top 5 in like the last 5 or 6 years or something like that. Derrick Henry would have last year if he didn't get hurt, obviously. But
I think that tweet's not relevant to Eckler because the touch threshold is more important than the age, typically. And Eckler is a unique guy who's not. He's 26 going on 27, who has the touches of a 24-year-old. Give me John Mechie.
Got him anyway.
Yeah. Whatever. There's a lot of people that are down on this guy. A lot of people think that he's just like a glorified slot receiver, yada yada. I'm an SEC guy. I've watched way too many Alabama football games. Hate them so much. Go Vols. But Mechie's talented, man, and he's got wheels, and he still has room to grow. And he's going to a team that's got Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins. I'm forgetting one other guy. But Mechie is probably seeing the field year 1 as a rookie. And I don't know that Brandon Cooks is going to be in this league forever at this point. I'm surprised he's still playing. I think his brains probably look like scrambled eggs. And John Mechie, I think, is going to have a place in this league. It feels gross to have 2 Houston Texans in this draft. But you know what? I got too many shares of Jalen Tolbert everywhere else in this hypothetical universe we're living in for this draft. So give me John Mechie.
Listen, 2 Texans. We had 2 Jets go.
I know. We're in a simulation.
Cats loving dogs. All right, Coach Craig.
Yeah, I'm kind of more in the camp that Mechie is just going to be like a good slot wide receiver in time. I think he kind of ends up being like a Jamison Crowder where he gives you like wide receiver 3 production. Maybe you can trade him for more at some point in time. And I think that's ideally what you're hoping for is just be able to flip him for something a little bit more. He could turn into a big target share for this Houston Texans team, especially if they do end up moving on from Brandon Cooks. Nico Collins didn't show enough last year when he really needed to. And I wouldn't be surprised if they had somebody else again next year. But for my pick, this is where we get to the nitty gritty, especially in one quarterback. Like if this is super flex, I'd probably be taking a quarterback here at the end of the second round. I assume Kenny Pickett's gone at that point already. So at that point, like I usually take like a Desmond. I take Desmond Ridder more than Malik Willis just because I don't want to wait around for 2 years to see if Malik Willis is even good. Because Ridder, is at least going to play this year, and or like you flip that pick for a second round pick, or once Ridder starts, you trade him for a second round pick in 2023 for a guy that just really wants a quarterback or believes in Desmond Ridder. Going down here, I am going to do it a little bit different this time. I'll do Jelani Woods, tight end for the Colts. Obviously, we know Matt Ryan loves the guys that can attack the middle of the field and his tight ends in general. So he is like the better version of Mo Alley Cox, who a lot of people out there really do love. And oddly enough, they drafted him and then they drafted some random other 6'7" tight end later on, like at a Youngstown State that really didn't do anything in college, but he was like transferred from some smaller school to Youngstown State and stuff too. And was kind of raw, but apparently they just love really big tight ends, except for Kylan Granson, who he's pretty much just like a slot tight end. He actually played wide receiver at Rice before transferring to SMU, if people don't know that.
All right, number 10, Ryan.
All right, I know I talked about Kenny Pickett in the on the last selection, but I don't want to talk about the quarterback here. I want to take Zamir White because I'd actually rather talk about his prospects. He landed with the Raiders, and the Raiders also didn't pick up Josh Jacobs' 5th-year option. So Zamir White goes in there as the backup to Jacobs. Jacobs has never really been he's always had a running mate, another relevant running back who's taking touches away. That's going to be Skyy White this year. Jacobs has also been consistently getting worse since his rookie season. And last year, he was a 3.9 yards per carry guy. And then in 21, he was a 4.0 yards per carry guy. And it's not absurd to suggest that Skyy White could go in there and hit like a 4.3, 4.4 or better per carry and incentivize the team to give him the ball more often because he's making stuff happen more often when he's given the ball over Jacobs. So if he flashes this year, you just walked into a potential lead back for the 2023 season.
At the end of the second round, which is immediate and amazing value. Yeah, that first draft of the Raiders crew, right? Their 3 first-round picks, none of whom had their 5th-round option picked up.
It's a bunch of Gruden grinders over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they're definitely going to be making some grinders at the local deli after they get cut shortly. Don, no, come on, that was a good grinder joke. No, is that just?
I'm sitting over here, navy beans, hoagies, and grinders.
Thank you.
Anyway, well, guess we'll just get out the black and gold again.
Oh no, I'll do it.
Go ahead. At this point, the one guy who's definitely going to be a starting quarterback because he's going to beat out Turbo. Turbo's only on a 2-year deal, after which they can easily get out after this year. Realistically, he's an accurate quarterback, good enough mobility to get you something. They're going to try to put in more of a mobile offense where they're rolling their quarterbacks, doing more of that kind of stuff. He can get you a first down, tough kid, going to protect the football. And this is something we usually don't get out of a college prospect. We get a guy who we know can already play in that environment, can already play on that specific field in whatever weather is thrown out at him, because that's where he played his college ball. Literally had to walk across the hallway to go from the pit facility to the Pittsburgh Steelers facility. If there's a team that has more familiarity with their prospect, I don't know about it. So I'll go with that.
Yeah. Did anybody see the meme of the giant AirPod?
Yeah.
with little Kenny Pickett hands on it? Fantastic. Smells like cabbage. Carney.
If you watch the draft coverage show, when we had our Kenny Pickett card up, instead of a player image, it was the picture of the Burger King guy.
Oh, no.
So there actually is something about why his hand size was smaller too. That he's got something with his thumb that it can't extend all the way out.
Double jointedness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
We'll let Kyle and the guys tell you about it.
All right,
They'll
Ronnie.
use better words than thumb weird.
Weird thumb. Our final pick of our mock draft.
As a guy with small hands myself, fine with
Not
Kenny
shocked.
Pickett going there.
You definitely have small hand
These little
energy.
babies right here. There's 3 guys I'd be fine with here. I joked earlier, Jalen Tolbert was a guy I was looking at the last pick. I think he's going to be fine in the NFL. He's just got 2 guys I like better ahead of him that aren't going to go away anytime soon. So I'm going to skip over Jalen Tolbert. I'm going to skip over Wandale, even though he has the best draft capital of this group right now. I'm going to jump all the way down in these pre-draft or rankings from GR and go for Khalil Shakir in Buffalo. He's really talented. He's a great guy. I actually just dropped Isaiah McKenzie in our Writers League. I think Khalil Shakir is probably not going to do a whole lot in his rookie season, but I don't believe in this whole Gabriel Davis hype train thing. I think that guy might have a couple years of relevance in the NFL, maybe. Stephon Diggs isn't getting younger. I know they just gave him money. And this is a team that I would think would like to use more than just one guy on offense on a regular basis at the receiver position, and it sounds like they're making the moves to do that. Khalil Shakir is one of the more exciting dart throw prospects in this class, and I got the dude that's paired up with Patrick Mahomes. I'll go take at the end of this second round the guy that's paired up with Josh Allen on the off chance that he ends up panning out, and I think there's a decent chance he does eventually as a wide receiver 3 for fantasy.
Awesome. Craig, looking at who's left over, is there anybody who you're surprised is sitting out there after 2 rounds?
Let's see. So, like, in a 1 quarterback league, I'm not surprised that none of the other quarterbacks went. I mean, you could, like, some people make a case that maybe you should take like Malik Willis or somebody like that, but like you're just banking on ups, like you're just hoping for upside at that point. But like I mentioned, I don't want to sit around on this dude for 2 years and figure out if he's any good. I think, let me go look at my rankings once again. Let's see. I don't think there's any like big ones because like some of these other guys, like a wide receivers, they were second round guys in real life, but like Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyquan Thornton, like they were kind of surprises that they went in the second round too. I probably have Tyquan Thornton a little bit higher in my rankings than most people, just because I think there is the upside there. Like obviously he did produce some at Baylor. People kind of underrate him. And it'll be interesting to see what the Patriots do with him. Obviously, they tried to bring in Nelson Aguilar for that deep threat last year, and that just didn't happen for whatever reason. So obviously, they brought in another guy to try to replace in that aspect, take a little bit of pressure. I know Mac Jones doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but there's still some upside there. There's a lot of guys remaining that I still like taking shots on, but like once I get past like the top 9-10 guys, I don't have value the picks too much this year overall, anyways.
Ryan, one guy who should have been picked. Who is it?
Brian Robinson Jr.
Alabama guy?
I like him. He's an Alabama guy. Yes, he is. But this
all right, buddy. You went robot on us again. That's all right. I'll talk about him. Ryan loves Alabama. He loves Alabama like a fat kid loves cookies. So if there is somebody from Alabama on the board, Ryan loves him.
That's facts.
Except for John Mechie.
Except for John Mechie. No,
John
you
Mechie.
like John Mechie.
I do like John Mechie. I'm high on John Mechie, but there was a player ahead of him on my board, so I took him. But the thing about Robinson is his landing spot is actually kind of underrated because, you know, Antonio Gibson, he hasn't really taken that next step. I don't know if they're going to really want to pay him when his contract is up. And Brian Robinson I think he's a stronger runner than Gibson. He might not have the same upside, but there's just something missing from Gibson's game, and he hasn't really taken that next step. So if Robinson goes in there and he can be productive, him and J.D. McKissick would be a nice little 1-2 combo in a backfield going forward.
All right. Well, gentlemen, Ronnie, it is time for you to take over.
Yeah, let's do it.
For the Aaron Donald jersey.
This is very exciting. I might have, in an alternate dimension, snuck my name in like 50 times because I really want. It's an authentic autograph on an Aaron Donald jersey who just won the Super Bowl and who is the best player in football over the last 22 years, not named Tom Brady. And I would argue that he's more talented than Tom Brady from a football perspective. Tom Brady's just the dude. And let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to hop over to these things so we don't get sucked into the matrix here real quick. All right. So got Aaron Donald on there. I can't see what I'm sharing right now.
Yep. Aaron Donald's up there right now.
All right. So don't ignore this. If you comment, too late. But you guys might remember this from the shows we did this weekend. If you caught those, we threw this up there every 10 minutes, reminding people to comment to enter to win. Aaron Donald autographed jersey giveaway. This is randomlist.com. It's just a random website that I found that lets you go in and throw in a bunch of stuff and randomize it. Here's a list of all the people with the YouTube comments, the Reddit users. There's a bunch of people in here that got multiple entries, which was really smart of them. You guys want to give it like a 5-second countdown? I'm just kidding. Let's go ahead and do this. So Aaron Donald jersey giveaway is going to 3, 2, 1, go. YouTube, Aaron C. Congratulations, bro. Aaron had a couple really great comments on the second day and the third day. He asked some pretty poignant things about players going in the draft that we were talking about. I remember you specifically. So I'll shoot you a message on YouTube. We'll get your address and all that stuff, and we'll get this shipped over to you. Congrats, man.
Wow, congratulations, Aaron C, on winning the Aaron D jersey.
Whoa, there's the Matrix.
That was trippy as hell.
That was Doctor Strange stuff right there.
Now you're going to see that tomorrow.
I
Gentlemen,
am.
it is time for tags. That's where we tell the riders where they can find us and any final thoughts. Craig.
Yeah, so thank you guys for having me on once again. It's kind of last minute. I know Dave reached out to me, so shout out to him as well. He's a very, very good guy. But you can find me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. You can find me on YouTube at Coach Craig Sports. Kind of already talked about the MLB DFS over there. Draft grade videos coming out. There'll be another one tonight for the NFC North, and tomorrow will be the NFC South. I had to think off the top of my head which one it was. And then obviously you can find me at True North, writing some football content over there when we get kicking back up again. And then on WeBetATS.com, doing the MLB DFS cheat sheet. I'll write a little bit of NBA content there during the season as well. And then, God, I got to think of everything else. Patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. That's where I'm going to have my fantasy football rookie rankings, obviously. I go through and I grade pretty much all the prospects too. I was really behind this year. I had a bunch of other things going on, but I had it for last year as well. So if people are interested in that, I do what's I call snap count spreadsheets. So week to week, every single team, like offense and defense, each player, like how much percent of the snaps they play each week. So I don't know of anybody else that does like this, where you can find it all in one thing. Like you can go to Pro Football Reference and you can look up Elijah Moore, and it will show you like all his bye week, but this shows you the whole team comparatively. So like if one guy went down and the other guy went up, you can see it all easily in one spreadsheet. And then last year I did what I call a matchup sheet too. I'll probably simplify that a little bit more, so it's less work for me this season. So if you're interested in that, and then you can also check me out on the Stacks app at Coach Craig Sport 2. The Stacks app is just pretty much an app. Like you can kind of say like TikTok, but not really. But it's you go on there, you make a video about a discussion point. So like I made one today, like how does Hollywood Brown going to the Falcons affect them financially for the future? So because obviously they're going to pay Kyler Murray, they're going to pay Hollywood Brown. You still got DeAndre Hopkins under contract. You can get out of that, like I mentioned earlier, for save $8 million next year, but it's probably going to be the year after that. Zach Ertz is $10 million in dead money. So like there's all these things, and how's that going to affect them going forward? But you can do anything like that. One of my buddies made one that's like losers of the draft, and people can just respond in video form up to 30 seconds. So it's a pretty cool app. Lots of different people there to chat with.
Fantastic stuff. Ronnie.
I got my two things here in my little video description of my name, whatever that's called. It's at Ronnie A. Evans on Twitter, and then I'm on Reddit all the time, user Mr_football. Also, my YouTube page is Mr_football. It's audacious of me because I didn't play in college or pro, but I love football. And also, I'm on the Chop Shop twice a week here over at Gridiron Ratings. We kind of cover a little bit of everything. And we're going to be bringing in Nathan Janke from PFF here. We're going to have Gary Davenport, it sounds like, from Now Football Guys, formerly Fantasy Sharks. He just announced today he's switching over. Had Mike Wright on a show a long time ago, and I think I'm going to be able to pull him back in. So we'll see who we can get guest-wise, but probably a lot of like mock drafts and IDP talk and Dynasty, like overall talk there over on the Chop Shop. So all the Gridiron Rating shows are on this YouTube channel down below. All the playlists, all the content. You guys should check it all out. And then I'm there on the Chop Shop.
Great stuff. Ryan.
Oh, thanks for having me on, JJ. This is a whole hell of a lot of fun. You can find me on Twitter at the Debbie Dirtbag, as well as at my YouTube channel, the Debbie Dirtbag. And again, I have a 3-part series breaking down all of the relevant rookies you need for your dynasty squads. Find out, take the best players for yourself before your league mates even realize they're gone.
And last, Don.
I'm here. You can find me here. This is where I live.
Quite literally, it's your basement. Well, thank you. Special thanks to Coach Craig for joining us tonight on such short notice. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dave Heilman, for helping me hook up with Craig. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ryan, Ronnie, and Don for joining me as always. You can find me on Twitter at JJ Wenner. Be sure to check out Gridiron Ratings Draft Guide. It's available at our site, gridironratings.com. check out Getting Defensive tomorrow night at 8 p.m., where we talk about the second round IDP rookies and their landing spots. And tune in next week when we look at the late round rookies. Who are the day 3 and UDFAs to keep on your deep dynasty radar? From all of us to all of you, be safe, be well, and as always, boat drinks, my friends, boat drinks.